Commissioner, thank you. Thank you very much for always making yourself available to speak with us.
Happy to. It's always about transparency.
Thank you, sir. My goal with the police department and my goal with the interviews is to inform the people of our community.
Sure.
Because there is a lot of perceptions. A lot of people, they make up their mind on things that they believe it's the truth. Sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes I am wrong. But I make those perceptions based on wrong information or misleading information. And that's why I always try to go to the top that can give us the information that is correct so we can make or reach opinions that are based on facts and not on what we think are facts. Commissioner, the nation is going through a crisis today.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about something that just happened last Monday. This is something that it's been happening. We had a few lives that were lost within the last few months. And people have said, look, it's enough. Okay, it's enough. We need to fix the system. What do you think about what's going on, sir?
So, with referring to Minneapolis, I can say that I was like every other human being that saw that. I was shocked, disgusted, horrified, and I was sick. And I don't know how else you would look at the situation like anything else. That's not just me as a police officer or Yonkers Police Commissioner. It's as a father, it's as a son, a brother, and most importantly, as a human being. I was absolutely horrified. And I think you'll find the overwhelming majority of law enforcement personnel that try to do their job every day are absolutely disgusted and horrified. And our prayers and our thoughts go out to Mr. Floyd's family based on that.
But you know, sir, the outrage to a lot of people is not just what happened, it's the delay that it took to address what happened. We saw that on TV yesterday that the law enforcement, prosecution, police chief, they were asking people who had any video or witnesses, what else did we need? The video was pretty clear of what happened. You could see it and say, yes, it did happen. The gentleman was taken out of the car, sat down on the sidewalk, removed to the car, and the knee on his neck for about 7 to 8 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If it was your department, would that evidence be enough for you?
Well, what would happen right off the bat with not just the Yonkers Police Department, but New York State in general? So in July, so the public understands, in July of 2015, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order. And essentially what he did was he created a special prosecution wing of the Attorney General's office that deals specifically with deaths of civilians in police custody. And so the focus of this, and it's a good idea, and I don't know, the challenging thing about the United States is I don't know what Minnesota, what their laws are, I don't know their procedures or anything like that. It's, we don't have a nationalized police force, so I can't speak to Minneapolis. I can't speak to Minnesota. I can speak to Yonkers and New York State. So the governor in 2015, as I said, created this special prosecutions unit. The idea of this is to take the police department whose officer is in a situation like that out of the equation.
So I have to interrupt you for a minute, and I apologize. The volume is too low, they're telling me. So let me just raise the volume a little bit. So we want people to hear what we have to say.
We certainly do.
So guys, let me know if the audio is good. So sir.
So as we were saying, the Special Prosecutions Unit was signed as an executive order by Governor Cuomo in 2015. I believe it was July. The idea of this is that police departments should not be investigating their own in something as serious as that. That for the purposes of transparency and the purpose to gain public trust, you bring in an outside entity like the New York State Attorney General's office, who doesn't know anybody involved, who doesn't know the police department or anything. They're going and investigating. In this case, if you want to draw a parallel with Minneapolis, you're going to, they're looking at it strictly as a crime, and they're going to conduct their interviews. So if this were to happen here, as to your initial question, we would not do the investigating. The New York State Attorney General's office would come in with their Special Prosecutions Unit. In addition to them, I am absolutely certain, as was the case with Minneapolis, that the Department of Justice would come in, probably the Civil Rights Division, and also investigate it, because there's different levels of crime that you can charge for a situation like that on the federal level versus the state level. Again, I don't know what the procedures are in Minneapolis, but to your question, if it were here, it would be the New York State Attorney General's office, the Westchester County DA's office would probably help, and it would also probably be the Department of Justice.
Well, sir, I'm not an attorney, even though sometimes I play one, but I'm not. But I'm just a regular guy, and I think that what you just said is just logic. Okay? You don't want the police department to investigate itself. You want somebody outside your jurisdiction to investigate the thing. So I would think that in every state, they should probably follow the same guidelines, no?
Well, I would say as an American citizen, absolutely. But if you look, even in this case, this was signed into law in 2015. And these problems have been happening way beyond 2015, right? This has been happening for a long time. And so I don't know if every state has something like this. These incidents seem to push themselves toward and push these conversations to the forefront to make sure in the future. I think the biggest value you get out of having the Attorney General's office investigate and taking the local police department out of the equation is trust with the community that it's going to be investigated thoroughly and accurately. Whether the police department is going to do that or not, it's specifically for the optics and making sure the public is comfortable and reassured that it's going to be investigated properly. You bring in an outside entity. And it is logic, you're right.
Yeah. Now, sir, in your police department, in our city, we have not had any situations like this. Is it because of training, sensitivity of your officers, or is it just because of luck?
I think that it's probably three things primarily, and we'll go one by one if you like.
Sure.
The first thing is accountability. So in this police department, our officers are very accountable. We have a very robust internal affairs investigation component of our job, and automatically they may be called out on certain incidences. So we have that. So the officers are aware what the rules are and what's expected of them, and overwhelmingly they follow it great, fantastically. If not, there are discipline, there are training issues and things like that. So that's the accountability portion as to why I think this didn't happen here. The second piece is community outreach. So we've really, really worked hard, and that's why these incidents is painful. They're so painful because it feels like we get set back another 5 years. It feels like we're set back 10 years because we're going to be looked at the same way of that one officer in Minneapolis. Clearly, that's so out of bounds. I just, as I said earlier, I was sick when I saw it. But the community outreach is a big thing. You can't really understand or know someone unless you really know them. And the way you get to know them is the way you talk to them and you interact with them. Can't be a conversation that happens, one day after something bad like this happens, like, oh, let's all put this back together. It's years of building relationships, especially with the African American community that's been so fractured in police and community relations. So that's a relationship that we put a very high premium on to make sure that we're constantly conducting outreach. We have great partners in the community, people that can talk to us, people we can talk to. There's no difference in the African American community than any other community. They want a safe neighborhood. They want a secure neighborhood. But they also want to feel safe with the police. And we always have to be mindful of that. And we always have to work towards that goal to make sure that we have credibility, that what we're doing is what is correct, and that we have the community's trust. So we're always working on that. Are we perfect? We are absolutely not. Are we ever going to be perfect? We are not. So that's the second piece. That would be the community outreach. The third piece, and probably the most important piece with respect to this type of incident, is training. So what we do is we do lots of different types of training. Tactical training, how to do takedowns without injuring someone. And what's more important, I think, is the verbal training that we do. We do de-escalation training. We do verbal judo. We have our officers trained, and some of them are learning about procedural justice. Procedural justice about how a perception of communities of color feel about the police, how they arrived there, and what their perspective is. You can, it's so much more. It's very important to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and understand where they're coming from. So that's very important. And the de-escalation. We're finding more and more that we have problems, and I don't know. Again, I don't know the gritty details of what happened in Minneapolis. I was outraged like everybody else, and I saw the video, and that's really all I know. But there's also the mental health component that we're trying more and more all the time to understand the nature of mental illness, how to de-escalate a situation where there's mental illness involved without bringing it to violence. The truth is, we don't want to arrest anyone if we don't have to. We don't want to have any kind of confrontation. The overwhelming majority of law enforcement people that serve in the United States are happy when they go home and they don't have to make an arrest. It's not a comfortable thing. It's not a happy time. It's not something that people rub their hands together and are thrilled about. It has to be done sometimes to keep communities secure, but at the same time, it's not something, and you can see the numbers with the Yonkers Police Department. We've reduced our arrests probably from a high in, I want to say like 2014 or 2013 of around 7,000. Now we're below 4,000 because we realized that we weren't getting the value out of those arrests. You know, the CompStat revolution kind of drove us towards, if we can just focus on pattern crimes and focus on the small things, we'd be able to solve crime. Now, it did in some cases solve crime. We watched crime go down. But at the same time, we alienated the community. And that was a byproduct that's not acceptable. So now what we're trying to do is to move away, and we have. I mean, you know, again, the proof is in the metrics. 7,000 arrests, less than 4,000 now. Now that we have way less arrests, there's more time for us to do community outreach. There's more time to extend our hands to people. Now, there are people that no matter what we say or what we do, we're going to be the bad guys. And that's part of the job. And it's unfortunate because I think more often than not, 8 times, 9 times out of 10, when you get to know somebody, you'll have a relationship with them. And so it's always the communication piece. It's always the relationship piece. Relationships are everything, and we really work hard on that.
So, Commissioner, so let's bring back to Yonkers. You know, if I speak to lots of people on the street, they say that we did not have a Minneapolis in Yonkers because of luck, because we do have racial tension in Yonkers. And I'm sure that you know about what happened at the shop fair in Yonkers on Main Street.
Yes, I do.
No one is condoning anyone for stealing. What we condone is the excessive force.
Correct.
Your officers cannot use excessive force after they make an arrest. Stores cannot do that. But on top of that, there were the racial slurs. Get the FN out of here. This is a community where we have lots of people, minorities, Latinos, blacks, and this had happened at that very same store multiple times and in stores around. How did you handle those situations? Because the people are saying that the only people that you were interested in speaking with was the store. I spoke with some of your officers. They were not interested in my video. The person who was swinging the bat around, that didn't hit somebody because he missed, not because the intent was not there, nothing happened to him. So the perception, and I think we had this conversation before, perception sometimes turns reality. When we call the police and say, look, I'm being called an N, nothing happens. But God forbid somebody says, get the F Drew out of here. Now something will happen.
That's part of a larger national conversation. I don't know if you're ever going to get rid of perception, especially with the advent of social media, because it seems like, you know, and I'm not on social media personally.
Yeah, I know.
I don't want to take, I don't want to take anything away from the Yonkers Voice. You do a good job, but I just think it's so divisive. I think in a lot of ways it's really good and it's healthy to share information and things, but with relation to shop fair, it's like anything else, right? So you look at a number of different, you look at it through different prisms. The first prism is what happened there. You have to get you had part of the video. You didn't have all of the video. There was video from the store. So what the police department always likes to do, and I think this is what sometimes lends to the frustration of the public, is why aren't you moving fast enough? Why are you moving so fast? Because we have to interview everybody. We have to pull the video from the store. We have to take the video you have. We have to do all these different things to make sure that we understand that we're getting it right, right? It's very important to get it right. Sometimes getting it right takes a little bit more time than moving quickly and then getting it wrong and having to correct the situation. So you have that. You look at the situation. How can we improve? How can we address it? So that's that. But then the second piece, and I think you and I were talking about this earlier, one of the things we see with shoplifting, in particular in smaller stores, is these incidents seem to crop up from time to time. We had one at the beauty salon around the corner, correct? And we had one at shop fair.
Multiple at shop fair.
Right. And so one of the things we see with the larger stores is if you're arrested and convicted for shoplifting, the store can do a bar out, can issue a bar out officer in cooperation with the police department and the district attorney's office, where the owners can sign an owner's deposition to make sure they say the person has been arrested, he's not welcome in here anymore. And so that may be a better strategy. Like, I'd love to see, and I always love metrics, so I'm big about evidence, I'm big about facts, I'm big about trying to take whatever equation we have and kind of flipping around, turning upside down, looking it inside out, and saying, like, is there a better way to do this? So we have, a way a shoplifting incident handled that could have been done much better. But we still had a shoplifting incident, right? We're not excusing the theft of what happened there, and we're not excusing the behavior there. But how do we make it better? So that's when you bring in you put your cap on and you think about thinking out of the box. You say, maybe we do the bar out orders. You've been arrested, you've been convicted here, you're not welcome in this store anymore. And that eliminates the same person coming back over and over and over again. Now, there'll still be people that even disagree with that, saying you could be arrested 20 times, I should still be allowed to go in the store. What we're looking for is the big picture to solve the problem, to say, I'd like to go back in 2021 and look at 2020 and say, we had X amount of incidents in 2020 with respect to shoplifting where things went sideways, like they did shopware. And then in 2021, based on what we did there with the bar out orders, we didn't have any, or we had 30% less. Or maybe we had more and we have to retool and figure out another way. But it's all about always trying to solve the problem.
You are a man about metrics, but what about the racial issues and the racial division that sometimes we see? How do you address that? If I'm a citizen of Yonkers and I go to a store and somebody tells me, get the FN out of here, and I call the police department, how do you handle that?
That's a very hard question because I'm not there. I have to see the facts. I have to understand the context. There is also freedom of speech. I mean, people call us names all the time. You can't necessarily arrest someone for that. Is it offensive? Is it disgraceful? Is it completely inappropriate? Does it help us as human beings?
Sir,
Absolutely not.
You cannot discriminate based on race or religion.
Well, you cannot. You cannot.
So if I am asked to leave because I'm black, then that is discrimination.
It is discrimination, but does it rise to the level of a criminal charge? Can you find, because remember, the police deal primarily with crimes, with criminal charges, with offenses. Is that more of a civil thing, that I went in there and I was denied that based on the color of my skin and now I'm going to sue? I don't know. It depends. Like this, if someone slapped you in the face and used that word, then sure, then it's what we refer to as aggravated harassment. If you suffer a physical injury, it's even worse. So it all depends on, we'd have to go, it's hard to go the scenario building. You'd have to almost like get me a scenario that's already occurred and say, take a look at this and you tell me what you think you should have done.
So, sir, the reason I'm asking those questions is not to put you on a spot.
I don't mind being put on a spot.
Even if I try, I don't think I would succeed.
I don't mind.
But it's to use these
Yeah.
so people that are watching and hearing, they can get to know why certain things happen.
Well,
Police did not react this way because A, B, and C. Or police reacted this way because of this, and that. So it's more like an informative kind of.
the thing is that, it's also hard to talk about how people happen in stores. I'm more comfortable and more able to answer questions based on the police relations. And the truth is, right now, we have to be very patient with the public. More patient, we're always patient, but even more patient now, based on what happened. Based on what happened, it is probably one of the most painful things I've ever seen in my life. I don't have the answer for why. I don't. I wish I did. But people need to know that myself and the overwhelming majority of police officers, we stand with the community. We stand with the community saying that's absolutely unacceptable. There has to be justice, has to be done. And it's my understanding today there was an arrest for the officer that had his knee on the neck for murder.
Murder 3 and manslaughter.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about someone who allegedly or alleged that was sucker punched by one of your officers.
Mm-hmm.
Shameka, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it came to us. Can you see what happened to my daughter? Police did this, police did that.
Okay.
There was a video clip of 2 seconds, 3 seconds. What happened?
Okay, I can't speak specifically to the incident. I don't like using names and I don't like using addresses and things like that. But I'll give you the context of it as best I can. The police were called to a residence. It was approximately a 6 or 7 story building of a woman, emotionally disturbed person, threatening to jump off the roof by committing suicide by jumping off the roof. The officers responded. They went up. They looked for her. They couldn't find her. They later located her, and there was an altercation. she was taken into custody. What the public needs to understand is we are investigating this, number one. But number two, we had to take her into custody based on the mental hygiene law. So for the people that don't understand the mental hygiene law, if someone, in this particular case, we have a verified case of someone saying, I'm going to kill myself by jumping off the roof, we have to take them in under the New York State mental hygiene law so they can be evaluated by a psychiatrist. Because, and I know you're a scenario guy, let's flip the script for a minute. Let's say that we decided, you know what, we don't think she's going to jump off the roof, and we're going to leave her alone, and she walked away, and then there wasn't that altercation, but then she went back upstairs up to the top of the roof and jumped off. Would we be having another conversation right now about...
Surely, I would be criticizing
right.
you, why didn't you...
Right, we would have another conversation about why didn't you take her in, and people would be saying that, and they'd be right. And so what I ask for is, in this particular situation, like all situations, it's being investigated. You know, the procedures are working. I think within an hour, our internal affairs unit was called to begin the investigation. We didn't need her to make a complaint. We didn't run and make the complaint because we saw it on video and said, oh, this is going to be a bad one. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. By 2 a.m. or 2:30 in the morning, internal affairs was there, and they're pulling video, and they're interviewing people, and there'll be a determination will be made. But it can't, the thing is, some people say it has to happen today. It's not, you don't do justice, it's not fair to the police officers, it's not fair to the person, it's not fair to the people involved in the incident if you do things too quickly and you don't do them properly. In this age of video, it takes time to draw that video, to view the video, to talk to people. There's a lot of different pieces to this. We're not making excuses. We'll look and see what happened. We'll match it up with our policies and procedures and make sure things were done properly. And if they weren't, there's a whole litany of things that can be done. There is discipline, there's retraining, there is counseling. It may be unsubstantiated. That is how all of the internal affairs investigations go, so people know. But the most important thing I want people to understand is, and I don't know how many other police departments do this, within 1 hour of this incident, we had our internal affairs team come from their home, because they weren't working in the middle of the night, and start investigating.
Well, Commissioner, I agree that we have a great police department. Sometimes I wish they didn't give me as many tickets I had to put in. I have to put that in.
And I said this last time, I'll say it again. I don't want to get involved in this.
I'm just kidding. I was just kidding, sir. I was just kidding.
As long as you park legally, there's nothing anybody can say to you.
I wish all the media were, seen in that way.
I agree.
Okay, if it's News 12, CNN, ABC, they can park whatever they want, and your officers will not give them a ticket. So there is a little bit of selective enforcement when it comes to who is who and who gets tickets. But let's talk about escalation and compliance.
Yes.
I see, sir, that lots of times when there is police incidents involving an engagement with somebody from the community, that at times things get out of control.
Sometimes they get out of control, and sometimes the officers do such a great job, they bring everything back down.
They bring everything down. But I want to talk about, look, at the moment of the encounter is not the right time, and I'm going to take my own advice, is not the right time to engage, argue, discussing about what's right, what's wrong. Because, look, at the end of the day, they might take me in, and I might need to get an attorney to prove that I was right. Okay, so let's talk about that. Give advice to the community. What's the right way? And if you feel like you have done some wrong, what's the steps afterwards?
I'm going to use something that I talked with a friend this morning about this, because obviously, like I said, this incident in Minneapolis, there's so much pain involved in it, and I think the best way to say it is, let's all look at each other as human beings. Some people will go on the internet or whatever they do, tweet or whatever, and say, well, that'll never happen. Let's just start at that fundamental basis. You're a human being, I'm a human being. Let's start there. What's the right way to treat a human being? Clearly, Mr. Floyd on the ground like that, that's no way you treat a human being. Okay? So it's that kind of thing. Let's start from the very fundamental position that we're all human beings. We all should be caring for each other. And you start from a position of respect. Again, it gets very challenging. You have lots of different issues. You have mental illness. You have drug addiction. You have, as you say, the heat of the moment. Happens a lot in domestic incidents where people are upset, people are angry, people are running hot. And obviously the COVID-19 component of all this doesn't make things easier because people have been in the house a long time, things get very frustrating. So what we want our officers to do, and by and large, overwhelmingly, they do a very good job of bringing things down, of de-escalating, and that's what we want. We consider it a win if we have to go somewhere and we can get someone to voluntarily comply. That to me is a win. If a person has to be arrested and they're taken into custody without incident, it's a win. It's a win for us, it's a win for everybody. If in the times it doesn't happen, that's where we say, was it done properly? Was it necessary? What was the need there? Can we see all these different things? And that's why we study those incidents very carefully.
So I'm going to make your words my words, something that I heard you saying before, and I really like what you said, that when you do an arrest as a police officer, treat that person like you would like to be somebody in your family to be treated.
Well, 1,000%. And I say that to the recruits for every police academies that come out. Right now, you're not a police officer yet, as your son, right?
Yeah.
In the academy. But what we want from them is to say, right now, you're coming in here fresh. You've gotten police training, you've gone through the academy, you're going to come out and you're going to work in the community. You're going to work in the community. Right now, you have a very pure view of how you want to handle things, right? Because you haven't seen anything yet, you haven't done anything yet. If you just maintain that one principle, how would, right now in this situation, if this was my father, how would I want my father treated? Right now in this situation, if I had a 19-year-old son, how would I want him treated? Right now in this situation, if my mother had a boyfriend and it was a domestic incident, what would I want the cops to do if I wasn't a police officer, was another police officer there? Because if you go by that guiding principle of trying to treat people like you would treat the people you love,
You will have much
it's
less.
gonna go right.
Now, sir, there is something else that I want to bring up. I know that we have to conclude the interview, but I think it's important because I live on social media and I see what people say, the conclusions that they reach. And one of the things that they talk the most is we need more black officers. We need to see more people of color on the top layer.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them all the time, you can. You need to have a good education. You need to pass the civil test, and you need to apply.
So let's talk about it for a minute. One of the reasons why I'm so big as police commissioner on the community outreach programs is that very point. To me, the most impactful age that we can connect with, especially youth of color, is between 11 and 15 or 16. And if we can make a bond and make a connection at that point, we're looking for we're thinking about the future of wanting those people to become police officers. It's going to make everything better. And we do things like that, like the whole idea of this great partnership that the PVA started under President Olson with the Yonkers Force. You know, these are high school kids that never would have had an interaction with a police officer before. And now we're having dinner with them before every game. They're wearing our colors, and we're rooting for them. And we're really developing a great relationship. Doesn't mean that we don't have different perspectives. But I think the ultimate success of that football program will be the first Yonkers Force player to get sworn in as a Yonkers police officer. And that's what we need to aspire to.
When that happens, please let me know so we can be there to film this.
Well, we already have, I got to tell you, we already have a number of people that have gone through our police cadet program that are now. One who's very near and dear to me just graduated from the New York City Police Academy. So they are, they're now police officers. So there's so much value in that.
Person here by name of Donnell Keith McCauley. 90% of the Yonkers police have a horrible engagement skills with the urban community in downtown Yonkers, north and south. Do you have those problems in east of Yonkers?
Well, first of all, I totally disagree with 90% of our officers having a problem.
That's an exaggeration.
It isn't, and it's unfair.
Yes.
Let's go with what's factual. Like, does Donnell even know how many police officers we have and what that number would be? I don't believe it. I just don't. But I will tell you this. One of the biggest challenges of policing is that people normally call us when they're not happy. So yes, we have people that are frustrated with us in wealthy neighborhoods. We have people that are frustrated with us in poor neighborhoods. We can't always do what they want us to do. They're like you said, a lot of times it's about educating the public. But in general, I think you would agree that other than the parades we do for people's birthdays now, which we've been doing during COVID, sending the officers out, in addition to the great work that our Community Affairs Division does, which I'm so proud of, and you will be amazed at the work that team is going to be doing in the next 5 years. I mean, it's the most exciting thing I see about the Yonkers Police Department coming up is this new revised community affairs. We have the right people in there that really believe, that want to do it. We have great creativity as far as outreach programs. We've kind of devised it where the officers themselves can come up with ideas. We had one very fond of her. She's a female officer. She wants to do something with the LGBT community. Wonderful. You know, the mere fact that she's there working on that, taking that initiative to do that outreach where we might not have had that outreach with the LGBT community is huge. So what I would say is, I hate to say it, but the truth is I wish people would acknowledge we're not the fire department. When the fire department gets called, people are happy to see them.
They're going to save them.
When the police come, we may save them, but we also may do things that they may not want to do. And it's a really hard situation, and I wish people would also try to put themselves in the officer's shoes to think about what it's like if you go to a domestic and the father beat up the mother, and now you have to take the father out in handcuffs and the little children are watching the father get taken out. Now, should we not take him out in cuffs, and should we not put him under arrest for domestic violence? Of course we should. It's an ugly situation. It's not something that anybody wants to deal with, and we deal with it every day, and they do a great job doing it. And again, like I always say, can we be better? Absolutely. I'm not going to promise you unicorns and balloons. I'm going to tell you that every day we are working to be better and better for the community.
There is always room for improvement. That's what I should say, always. Now, Commissioner, I know that you invest in the community, trying to build a better bridge between community and police department. You have a coffee with the cop. You have with the program that the actor runs, Stop and Shake, all those things. Is there anything else that you think about implementing to forge a better connection with the community? Because like I said, I talk to people from everywhere, and I see that people from this side, from the west side of Yonkers, have a different perspective of the police department. Perhaps that's where we should focus in building that better bridge. What do you think, sir?
I absolutely believe it, and that's one of the best programs that I like is the Youth Police Initiative. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes,
it is a national program by
the Explorer. Is that
it's what we call YPI, Youth Police Initiative, and it's expensive, so it's a budget thing. But we do it because I really believe in how effective the program is. It's a national program that comes from the North American Family Institute, which essentially takes a group of police officers, a group of kids, over time, over months, where they sit down and they interact, they do role plays, they get to know each other, they get to understand each other. So now, is this great value for the youth? Of course it is. You know who else it's great value for? My police officers. Because they're getting a perspective. They're starting to see, not that they never did before, but we want to see our people, as human beings. We don't want to think about color. We don't want to think about, where you are on the poverty spectrum or you're not on the poverty spectrum. We want to think about people as human beings. Every single opportunity that we have to connect with people and to build a better bond, absolutely. And there's going to be ugly situations. The one thing I'm going to tell you, anybody who tells you that they have a crystal ball and there'll never be another Mr. Floyd incident, is probably doesn't have a crystal ball. That's what is the most painful thing. But the best thing we can do with these situations is hear the community, stand with the community when these things happen, and then spend every waking moment trying to figure out how we can continue to build these bridges. How we can, I'm mostly interested in talking to people that don't agree with me. It's easy to say, oh, we love the cops. We're going to bring you, a pizza pie for everything you did for COVID. That's great. I'd rather deal with people who say, I don't agree with you at all about your position on bail reform. I think, we may have different perspectives. Is there a way we can bring this conversation down to a very human level and have a good interaction, a healthy interaction? That's really the goal.
Now, Commissioner, I've been living in Yonkers for about 40 years. Commissioner Fernandez, I know him since I think the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. The Yonkers Police Department has changed greatly, and for the best. Okay, we know the issues that we had here. We know about the investigation to the DOJ, but we also realize the changes in the police department. What did you do to bring those changes? I know that the changes been happening. It's not a one-shot kind of stuff, but now you are the commissioner. What are you doing to better those changes so the community is comfortable with our police department, and things that you do to prevent something like Minneapolis from happening in Yonkers?
I think it's building relationships. That's what I do, and that's what I did in the 4th Precinct when I was a commanding officer. I feel like that's great experience to get you where you need to be to run a police department when you're running a precinct, because essentially a precinct is like a mini police department, and it's making relationships. You don't want to have, because bad situations are going to happen. I'll say it over and over again. I wish they wouldn't. This is the world, and I don't think it's ever been any different. So I have no reason to believe it's not ever going to change. But we can do everything we can to try to think about creatively different ways to just connect better, communicate better, understand each other better. So it's the relationships, that's number one. But as far as me personally, the most proud thing I am, like I said, is this conversion of going from about 4 police officers to 10 police officers with our community affairs unit. Because we are enjoying historically low crime rates. So why don't we take these resources where we were using it to stop gun violence and stop this? And again, I don't know if we're not going to get another crime spike in a month and we're going to have to deal with it, but for now we have the luxury of having a 10-person community affairs. And one of the things I like the most is we took the initiative when youth get arrested for very minor crimes, shoplifting, fighting, things like that. Not only do we have a diversion program, it's our diversion program. So it's a Yonkers Youth Court, it goes to the Community Affairs Division, and then instead of the kid getting a criminal record for shoplifting or something stupid that they're carrying with them for the rest of their lives, now we can get them with us. There is no criminal record, and we're taking that opportunity because you did shoplift, right? We're not gonna excuse that behavior, but you're gonna spend time with us now, and we're gonna get to know each other. And that's why I also love things like internships.
Now, Commissioner, for the safety of the community and of your officers, why aren't they using body cameras at this time in your department?
Okay, so
that could help both sides.
There are 2 issues with the body cameras, and I'm not opposed to body cameras. Just right now, it's way too expensive, and people have to understand that. Like,
right now,
it's not so much the actual camera. They don't cost a lot. It's
storage.
The storage, right, and the ability. So that's number one. Number 2, it may be, and it appears to be, a collective bargaining agreement. That it's a change in, union rules. So this is something that would have to be negotiated. I am certainly not opposed to body cameras, but if you have a price tag of $500,000 for it, I could think of much better ways for outreach to spend the $500,000, in my opinion. You'd really have to show me some real data. And remember, body cameras, like a lot of things, are relatively new. In the overall history of policing, they're brand new, right? Probably less than 5 years. They're very expensive, and we don't know exactly. It's kind of like the different types of drugs to use to treat COVID. We really don't know what the one is right now that works. We don't know how effective it is. We don't know if you have antibodies right now with COVID-19, what that means. Does it mean like when you have the measles and you're immune forever? Or does it mean nothing, where you can get it next week? So we don't know. So I also like the idea of waiting a little bit longer to see other larger police departments that probably have more money and more funding to do something like this, to see if this is really as valuable as we think it is. Seems like it, very expensive.
But I know that they've been talk about the body cameras for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there is someone within the police department is not too much pro body cameras. What is the justification? Just the dollar figure that storage and maintenance might be too high, even though those body cameras might help the police department and might help the community, because if there is a problem.
What I like to look at is, I can't speak for someone else, but what I like to tell you is that I like to read what I refer to as the white papers. So the white papers are when the real research goes in, where a university or a police research forum will take a look at something like the issue of body cameras and study it over a period of years. And they'll have very standard metrics about what to look at and understand the value of it. I like to read those to find out if this is value. It's great to read an article in the newspaper and say, oh, that's a great idea. It's not. This is an issue where if you're going to spend that kind of money, you have to make sure. I don't think you would disagree that if $500,000, if you didn't have, you'd want to proceed somewhat slowly to make sure that was the best way to put the money. And like I said, I'm not opposed to it.
Well, Commissioner, we've been here for almost an hour. We have to come to a conclusion sooner or later.
Okay.
So, sir, is there anything else that maybe I forgot to ask you that you would like to bring up or talk about it?
No, I think we, and I'm sure we'll have another one. So
hopefully. Oh, by the way, we are going to have a Zoom meeting, and we're going to invite a police officer from Minneapolis, clergy, multiple people from Yonkers, elected officials, and we would like also to invite you, because you are part of the law enforcement, so you are an important piece, okay, in Yonkers. Would you?
I'd be happy to. I'd have to
if
forward
time
it.
permits, of course.
I'd have to forward it for permission because I have a
Yes,
boss
yes,
too.
definitely.
And if it's approved, I'd love to.
On that note, we conclude this interview. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time.